Open your eyes now. Hello and happy Bloomsday. It should be, when I upload this, it should be the 16th June. And it's not 1904, but the book that Bloomsday is based around is set in 1904 on the 16th June. And it's this book. So we Dubliners celebrate this book on Bloomsday every year. It was a tradition started by Joyce's friends that kind of literary types kept up in Dublin. And this is a wonderful book. It's kind of famous as a really hard book to read because of some of the stylistic conventions in it and some of the uh, difficulties of not knowing what references are in it and things like that. There might be quotations made and you don't know where they're coming from. But I'm going to give you some sort of starter keys to the book. This is kind of an intro for somebody who is kind of curious about James Joyce's Ulysses, but wouldn't know how to start reading it and maybe feels intimidated by it because they've heard some stuff about it. And I won't lie to you, I found it a difficult book. And, I read a lot. So, and I'm Irish, you see, that is an advantage. So, to take some of the intimidation away from it, here's one of the first keys I'm giving you. I actually call the next thing I'm going to give you the first key, but this really is the first key because with the book you want to understand the story. And this story is about a guy called Leopold Bloom. It's about another guy, Stephen Dedalus, as well. But it's mostly about Leopold's travelling around a city and him. Will he run into Stephen during his day in 1904 going around Dublin? But this is a map. And it is courtesy, well, not courtesy, because I paid £1 for that. Oh, I bought that some time ago, so I don't know how much it costs now. But it is online free. And it's from Dublin Tourism and Ordnance Survey, who are people who do maps. And it's great because if you're not a Dubliner, you see, and you don't know your way around Dublin, it tells you everywhere that Leopold went on the day. And it's Bloomsday because his second name is Bloom, Leopold Bloom. So it's got all the stops on it, and there are actually little plaques now on these places for, for if you go around on Bloomsday or any other day in Dublin and you want to find these places, you look for the little plaques and you bring your little map and everything. But that is a very handy key to help you get into the story because some of the things in it you don't even recognize they're a place and you don't know what they're talking about. For example, at the very beginning of the book starts off in a Martello Tower, which is a little round tower. And I'm going to put a little picture of what it looks like. This is known now as Joyce's Tower, and there's a museum there and everything. But this is where the story starts, and Stephen Dedalus is the first character we meet. And we meet him in this tower, which they're kind of referring to as the omphalos of the world, or belly button of the world. And you wouldn't know what the reference is about unless you knew it was a round tower, and a Martello Tower is a round tower. And then things happen like he goes for a walk along Sandymount Strand, and you have to know Strand is a beach for a start, and then Sandymount is a place. So you could get lost very quick. And add to that the difficulties of some of the literary references in it, which usually Proteus is an episode that people get stuck at because it starts bringing in a lot of philosophical references and everything that, unless you go and look them up, you're going to be lost. But we have the internet now, you see, and there are loads of people doing these great blogs on the internet that talk you through the whole book and give you annotations and everything. So it's the sort of book that uh, pays out huge rewards if you don't mind going off and looking up something to see what he's referring to it in it. And in fact, Joyce gave us keys to this book as well. And I will talk about the key, the first key that he gave, because the book is a kind of a, you could think of the city of Dublin as a labyrinth in it. And the book is a bit of a labyrinth of ideas. And you've got to have keys to get into the labyrinth, but uh, James Joyce is the architect of the labyrinth, and he gives you a key, and then there are all these people on the internet who have other skeleton keys, and they can all give you bits of keys. So there's my first key I'm giving you today. I was going to do this as a thing that was going to have a few readings in it, and then I realized no, it has two male main protagonists in it, and that's not going to be very satisfying hearing that in um, a girl voice, even if it is a Dubliner's voice. And there are loads of fellas doing it on the internet quite well. And then there is one female character in it, Molly Bloom, but her soliloquy, which is in this, is done very well as well. And you can get things on YouTube with people like Siobhan McKenna doing it, and it's fabulous. So I'm not taking that approach. I'm just taking the approach of I'm showing you a few things that if you were curious about this book would get you started off, and I'll throw in a couple of little bits. I had a little bit at the beginning. I'll throw in a couple of lines, but really they're all out of one episode. I was going to do a few episodes, and then I ran into those kinds of problems about doing the readings and thought, no, it actually would be a better video, I think, to talk about the approach to reading it. So I'll come back to you at the end. I'm going to show you the key, the skeleton key that Joyce gave to help you get into the book. And it's actually got two keys in it. So you've got one key already with the map, and there are two keys in this next bit coming up. So all these are going to help you get started with this book.
So one of the first keys that Joyce gives you to be able to open the door into the labyrinth of this book and start to understand what's going on is this schema, which you might have in the back of your copy, but which is available widely. And Joyce actually wrote to people and told them about this little, what he had based the scheme of his book on. And it's done in kind of, you could think of kind of chapters as episodes in the book. And for example, Proteus, which I looked at, it shows you where it's set, the scene it's set on, the strand, the beach. It's showing you what art it relates to. For instance, earlier episodes related to theology. Theology does actually come up in Proteus as well, but philology is the art listed, which means language. And that's interesting because this Proteus is typically, it's famous for being the first kind of episode that people start abandoning the book at because they find it very difficult to understand what's going on. So the language is very dense in that one. However, it's not, you can't follow this too closely in that it's not just about language. A lot in the book is about language because Stephen, who this episode is concentrating on really, Stephen is a young author. So, of course, he's thinking about poetry and literature and arts like philosophy, linguistics, science, and we can get more clues over here as well about the style that the episode is written in. And they do that for all the different episodes. And that is very helpful, I find, because you can get very lost in the language, not just the content of what's been said, because in this one, there's a lot of philosophy like Aristotle and Aquinas comes up that if you don't know their philosophy and what their references that he's quoting are, you can get very lost. So you have to be prepared to look these up. Then it'll tell you what the main kind of theme of the chapter is. And we have in this chapter primal matter being the main theme. And that's interesting because the themes of the whole book develop from starting out in the Telemachus, and Telemachus is a person, so you might be starting to guess where this is coming from. If you're pretty well read, it might start looking familiar, because this is, he told people it's based on this. All the characters in it, our characters turn up in the Odyssey. Now it was the Charles Lamb sort of abridged version that he possibly would have been working from, and that he recommended. His key was he recommended people read the Odyssey in order to help them understand his Ulysses. So he was giving people some keys because he knew you wouldn't be able to unlock the labyrinth to even get into the book unless you had these keys. So we can see that other chapters here, it develops from the main themes that develop are themes that are not hugely closely always relating to the Odyssey, but overall the main structure of the novel is structured around the story told in the Odyssey. And in the next one, for instance, the next episode, Calypso, Molly Bloom, is kind of representing a nymph in that story. So a lot of the imagery and everything in that episode would have to do with that. So you'll find yourself referring back to this all the time to see some of the parallels that he's making. And he would deviate from the story, like for in Proteus, you sort of at parts you go, well, how does that relate to the Odyssey? Not terribly closely, except for the main theme of the protean nature of thought itself, of the mind of the writer as he's hopping about from different subjects and pondering them, and the protean nature of life, that he starts off from the tower, which represents the omphalos, the round shape of the belly button, basically. And the theme develops then of life, the circle of life, tides going in and out. So, that's not that close to the Odyssey, but some of the themes are developed in the Odyssey as well through stories and mythology. So mythology, theology, philosophy, all very important in this book, but you need the keys, you see, and this is your first key.
Won't you come to Sandymount, Madeline the Mare? Open your eyes now. Signatures of all things I'm here to read. Sea spawn and sea wrack, the nearing tide, that rusty boot. Snot green, blue silver, rust, coloured signs. I am getting along nicely in the dark. Am I walking into eternity along Sandymount Strand? They came down the steps from Leahy's Terrace prudently, Frauenzimmer, and down the shelving shore, flabbily their splayed feet sinking in the silted sand. Like me, like Algie, coming down to our mighty mother. Number one swung lordily her midwife's bag, the other's gamp poked in the beach. From the Liberties, out for the day. Mrs. Florence McCabe, relict of the late Patrick McCabe, deeply lamented, of Bride Street. One of her sisterhood lugged me squealing into life. Creation from nothing. What has she in the bag? So hopefully you'll read this book sometime, because there's no reason not to. If you like reading, if you like books that have literary characters in them that are very well read, Stephen Dedalus is very well read in it, and Leopold Bloom is a big fan of science, even if he sometimes gets it wrong. So there are kind of different personalities in it. Um, Even amusing personalities like Blazes Boylan, and Molly's kind of amusing as well. Uh, that will delight you, and it's a very funny book. Um, Very learned book. Took a long time to write. Takes a long time to get your head around as well, because you always find something new in it, and you find yourself reading different parts of it every year coming up to Bloomsday. But some of the people out there with other keys that I really enjoyed looking at when I was putting this video together were wikibooks. Wikibooks have annotations to James Joyce's Ulysses online, and that is very handy when you're reading the book. But I wouldn't be too slavishly looking up every single word you don't understand or every single quote, because you'll be a long time getting through the book, which you probably would be anyway, because there be some things you want to look up before you move on in the book. So that is a terrific resource for going through the book page by page. The text is there, and then the annotations underneath tell you where some of the quotes are from. For example, some of the denser bits of Proteus that people get stuck on, you can say, "Oh yeah, look, that's actually a quote from Aristotle or Aquinas in that bit. I didn't know that, or that's referring to this thing," and it does add to your enjoyment, obviously, if you're understanding things better that are going on. So, the other one I loved, a blog I really loved, was bloomsandbarnacles.com. That's a terrific blog that's very erudite and goes into um, topics that are kind of very involved topics, like themes of the books, like the nature of infinity, and what is the human soul, and what's the difference between a soul and a mind, and the cyclical nature of life. It goes into so many of the different themes around those things in detail, in a way that really elucidate the text a lot and make you want to go off and read other things, which is, I've been all week reading Aristotle now, really enjoying it. So I think you would enjoy that blog a lot. And then the Joyce Project have all the different episodes um, laid out as per Joyce's schema that I showed you, and all hyperlinked to extras about the text as well. So I found that extremely good as well. So you've plenty there, haven't you, to get you started. And you shouldn't feel too lost in the labyrinth, because the architect himself started you along the way, giving you your ball of string to be able to find your way back out again. So there's no excuse, and it's a very interesting book. And if you like literature and you like reading about literature and reading things in a literary style, like there's a whole episode, Oxen of the Sun, in it that goes through kind of a history of styles in literature. If that kind of head game really appeals to you, there's plenty of games like that in it, and it's a terrific book. So enjoy. Happy Bloomsday.